Hi everyone, today I'll be covering the CyberArk Workforce Password Management, or often abbreviated as WPM. So the objectives today is first to configure the WPM roles and policies so that we can allow access for those end users to the WPM features. We'll then onboard some secured notes, custom apps and passwords just to see the different ways that you can onboard different secrets. We'll then create a folder and share some of the items and show you what that looks like. And then I'll add a web app using land and catch. In this video, I'll be using Git as a sample application. And then we'll integrate MFA with the target application of Git. And then finally, we'll talk about the handling of shared secrets when users are removed. Here we are in the lab. First, what I'll need to do is create some roles and a policy to allow end users to consume the Workforce Password Management features. To do this, we'll head over to Identity Administration. And on the left-hand side, we'll click on Roles. And we'll click Add Role. The first role name will be WPM Users. And we'll give it a description. I'll add 2 members to this role. The first member will be Jane. And the second user will be Zoe. We will be using this role when we set up the policy for Workforce Password Management, but for now, I'll click Save. And I'll go back to Roles, and I'll add a second role. The name here will be WPM Allow Sharing, and we'll give it a description, and we'll click Save. I'm going to allow one of the users, Jane in this case, to be able to share passwords within WPM. And I'll head over to Administrative Rights here, and we'll click Add, and we'll search for Share, and we'll tick this box here for Shared Credentials. So this will allow Jane to be able to share credentials in the organization. So back in roles here, we've got 2 roles that relate to WPM. I'll now head over to Policies. It's important to understand that these roles here at the top are quite highly privileged, so they've been locked down to what suits the needs of this organization. But we'll click here to add another policy set just for the WPM users. We'll give this a name. We'll call it WPM User Policy. We'll give it a description. And firstly, we'll go to Specified Roles here. We'll click Add. We'll search for WPM. And we'll select WPM users. So this will allow both the users to access the WPM features, while the sharing, we've allowed the administrative right there. So there's no need to tick this here. So we'll click on Add and we'll click Save. When dealing with policies in CyberArk Identity, it's important to understand the highest priorities on the top. Because these 3 policies here are quite highly privileged, I want to ensure that they're always considered first. So I will drag this down to here. This is so in case we have a regular, privileged cloud user that is accidentally put into this role, we want to ensure that the correct authentication processes are applied to these highly privileged policies here. We'll go back into the WPM user policy, and I'll take you through some common settings that you may want to enable. First, we'll open up Application Policies. We'll go to User Settings. And we'll allow users to add personal apps. We'll allow users to customize their apps that they've added, just in case they need to make any modifications. This one obviously allows them to view and copy the personal passwords. We'll enable the land and catch, and we'll click Save. You could also consider some access settings when accessing secured items, but we'll leave that with the defaults. I'll expand out the Workforce Password Management. With the password requirements, I'll leave that default. You can change this as required, but I'll go to User Settings, and we'll allow users to attach files to the secured items. We will allow users to get passwords from safes for personal accounts if they've got access to the Privileged Cloud platform. We will allow users to access applications if there's TOTP enabled, and we'll click on Save for now. And finally, I'll expand out user security policies and user account settings here. And I'll scroll to the bottom in user account settings. And I want to talk about the transfer ownership of shared items here. So if you've got a user in your organization that has shared an item within Workforce Password Management, and you were to delete that user, for instance, they've left the organization, we want to transfer those items to a different user. So we can enable this. So firstly, I'll set the logic so that if a user is deleted and they've shared an item, that will be transferred to their manager in Active Directory. If there's no manager in Active Directory set, I'm going to transfer it to a specified user. This could be any user in the organization, but I'll select this here, and I'll select my Brad account just for demonstration purposes later. And we'll click Save. For this lab environment, I'll also expand our authentication policies and go to CyberArk Identity. Because this is a lab environment, I want to ensure that it's locked down, so I will select Yes on this. And just to lock down these users, I'll just add a quick rule. We'll add a filter of IP address. The condition will be inside secured zones. We'll hit Add on that. And I've got a auth profile called Privilege Cloud Auth Profile. And I'll click OK. And I'll select this one here to Not Allowed. So this means any WPM users must come from the secured zones. I demonstrated secured zones in a previous video, but that's configured down in the network here if you would like to do that. I'll hit Save on this and go back to policies. And so this WPM user policy is ready for those users that have access to the WPM user role. Now that we've got the roles and policies configured, let's test the policy by logging in as Jane. I'll open up Microsoft Edge here, and I'm doing this so that I don't have to log out of the admin session and it's easy for me to demonstrate. But before I log in as Jane, it's important to understand that a browser extension is required. And we'll come over here to extensions. We'll get extensions from the Microsoft Edge store. We'll search for CyberArk Identity. We'll click on Get here. We'll add the extension. Let's go to this icon up here and I'll pin this to the toolbar so it's easy for you to see if this is signed in or not. When it's not signed in, it'll be a gray color. When it's signed in, it'll be a dark blue color. I'll just close this tab here and we'll log in as Jane. Because this is the first time Jane's logged in, we'll go to the user portal. And we can immediately see a prompt here asking if we would like to sign into the CyberArk Identity browser extension. We'll just select Sign In, and that will automatically change this icon up here to a dark blue color. I'll just close this notification here. What I'll do next is I'll share some common use cases in Workforce Password Management. If we come to the Add menu up here, there's Catalog or Imported App here. Users can choose from a long list of applications to save them time when adding applications. They can also import from an existing password manager. If they have a password manager that's not listed here, they can download a CSV template, fill that template out, and then browse and upload that template once they've got all the passwords in it. And that will populate Workforce Password Management with all the passwords from their previous password manager. We'll click on Close. I'll add a custom app. So this might be something like this. And I'll click Save. Then the user can fill out more information here. I'm not going to add tags or folders or any notes. We can also put in the username down here. And the authentication key down here is if the application has like a TOTP capability. I'll click on Save. And I'll show you the next example, which is adding a password. So we'll call this Jane's sample password. We can put a description up here, change the logo, put in a username and the password. Again, you've got the authentication key if there's TOTP authentication enabled. You got the notes field. We can add in a custom fields. This application might have like an org custom field in the logon boxes, for example, and the value might be, a company name. You can also upload attachments, and of course we enabled that earlier in the policy. So we'll click on save on that. I'll click on add again, and we'll go to secured note, and I'll fill in the details. And if I scroll down in here, we can add custom fields or attachments if we need to. I'll click on save. I'll click on add again, and then we can go add folder. So a user might create several folders for different reasons. And what I'll do next is I'll create a folder that we're going to share shortly. So I'll give it a name. So give it a name and description. I'll click on save, and we have that there. Now that we've created that folder, we can come to the three dots and select share here. And I'll add a user. And in this case, we'll select Zoe. We can select the time frame. If we don't select anything, it'll be all the time. And we'll allow Zoe to view the passwords. So we'll click on share. And to make something visible on this, we'll go back to this sample custom app. We'll come to settings. And we'll add to a folder of finance shared passwords. So I'll click on save on that. And if we go into the finance shared passwords, we can see the sample custom app here. So I'll go and open a in private window, and I'll log in as Zoe. We'll go to the user portal as Zoe, and Zoe can copy the username and password of this app. I'll just close this incognito, and we're back in Jane's session here. I'll just go back to my items. Next, I'll share the land and catch capabilities. For this to work, you need to have the browser extension enabled and of course signed in. So I'll just open a new tab, and I've gone to this URL here. It's an open source application called GitT. Whilst it's not a finance app, I just wanted to use this to demonstrate the land and catch capability. So when a user logs into the common apps, for example, and they put in their credentials, when they click on sign in, the browser will prompt them if they want to save this to their user portal. The user can obviously change the settings here or the name of it, but in this case, I'll select yes. And I'll just close that. And if we log off this application, just to make sure that we're signed out, I'll close this tab. And if we come back to Jane's portal here, we can see that there's an application here. So if I click on this application, it will open a new browser tab and sign into that application for Jane. Before I log out of this application, what we can also do is come to the settings in this application, and I'll go to security here, and I'll enroll in a two-factor authentication. So let's just select that, and I'll copy this secret for the TOTP, and we'll go back to the user portal, and we'll edit this application. And we'll paste that here. I'll just hit apply. That gives us our time-based code, but I'll also save it just so we don't lose it. I'll go back to settings again, and we'll copy the numbers here. We'll go back to the GitT, and we'll verify that we have the authenticator secret, and we'll click verify. So we've enrolled in two-factor authentication for this application. I'll just sign out. And I'll close this, and we'll close this as well because we've saved that. And now if we open up the GitT application, the browser extension should be able to authenticate using the TOTP. So we'll just log out of this application, and I'll close this browser tab. And what we'll do is we'll demonstrate what happens if we share this to the finance folder. So we'll come to settings here, And we'll add this to the folder of finance shared passwords. So I'll just save that. And this time I'll log out as Jane because I need to ensure that we log into the plugin using Zoe, and we can't do that in private browser. So I'll just log in as Zoe. So of course we're logged in as Zoe. She can see both of these applications. And if we click on this application here, that will sign Zoe into this application. Even though it's Jane's account, it's just to demonstrate of what can be done with Workforce Password Management. I'll just sign out of that. And I'll log off as Zoe. I'll log back in as Jane. What I'd like to talk about is what will happen if we delete Jane's account in Identity. Because we've shared these two applications inside the Finance Shared Passwords folder, those two passwords will still remain in the system because the ownership of this folder will transfer either to Jane's manager. There isn't one in this environment, so therefore it will transfer to the Brad user. Well, these two secured items down here, because they're personal to Jane and they haven't been shared, they'll be deleted with Jane's account. So let's demonstrate that now. I'll just close this browser and we'll come over here to users. And if we tick Jane's account here, we can go to actions and we can actually transfer the ownership of the items to somebody else if we want to. So if I click on that, it's obviously detected that Jane doesn't have a manager, or we can specify a user and go through the wizard accordingly. But what I'd like to demonstrate is what will happen if we simply delete the user. Before we delete this user, I just want to prove to you that if I open up, because I'm logged in as Brad here, if I open up this user portal in a new tab, we can see Brad's account here doesn't have access to any passwords. So I'll just close that and we'll come back here and we'll go to the actions menu while Jane is selected and we'll select delete and we'll delete Jane's account. And if we open up the user portal in a new tab for the Brad account, we should see only two credentials because they're the only two folders inside the finance shared passwords. So I could click on this and the login process will still work. I'll just log out here and close that tab. And of course, the user could then go to the share permissions here and reshare out this to the required people when necessary. I'll just cancel out of there. This user, Brad, can access this application. I'll demonstrate that a different way. You can actually do it from the browser plugin up here and select the application you want to connect to. And as we can see, we're logged in as Jane. I'll just log off this application and close this browser tab. Because I don't want all these accounts, I'll just go and delete this and select delete here. But that will keep the applications here. Even if I refresh, and I'll delete the applications here as well. There are other methods on how administrators can push web apps to end users. If you come to Identity Administration here, and underneath Apps and Widgets, we have Web Apps. And this is the main area where administrators can add web apps for end users. I'll get into the detail on all the methods on how you can add web apps and what controls you can put in place. And this includes the Secure Web Sessions feature, or SWS. So stay tuned for that video, but for now, thank you for watching and I'll see you on the next video.